I want to acknowledge and thank Paula and Orville. Many, many years ago when I was working in Cold Lake, well actually it was Grand Center, I was working at the Friendship Center. My then boss was Linda Manus Dene from Cold Lake First Nation. And I was there as a summer student. At that time I had a waking vision in my office, which I immediately went to go and speak with Linda about. I said, Linda, I saw the most beautiful gathering. It was a gathering of hundreds of our elders. They came to one place and they were praying. They were praying for the earth. They were praying for humanity. They were praying for creation. All our relations, the four-legged, the winged, the sacred beings in the oceans and waters, all creation. It was so profound and impactful. Within that year, I found myself on the blood reserve. And that was the first time I met Arvo. That gathering, there were over 100, if I remember correctly, elders from throughout Turtle Island that had gathered, just as was shown to me in this waking vision. And the gathering was for exactly the fulfillment of those prayers. And there was a prophecy that had been fulfilled, and that prophecy was the gathering itself, and that there was an elder, Mohawk, who read the wampum belt for the first time in over 400 years. To say that I actually was able to live and experience the vision that was shown to me was in itself very impactful. And that was the first time that I had the honor to be amongst the elders and to pray with White Calf Buffalo Woman's Pipe. My life hasn't been the same since. So what I'm here today to talk about is, and thank you, Paula, because it wasn't a part of the schedule. I just got off a webinar this morning, which the Survivors Circle for Reproductive Justice hosted. And the webinar that they hosted had to do with the book, the second edition of Sacred Bundles Unborn. To keep it as simple as possible, historically, we may or may not be aware that sterilizations of Indigenous, Métis, Inuit women and men occurred in the sanatories, in the residential schools and Indian hospitals. When put in that perspective, it's all as though it were past tense and no longer occurring, which couldn't be further from the truth. I am a survivor, and the most recent reported sterilization that was brought to the attention of Senator Yvonne Boyer was in 2024. So as I stand here and share with you today in a good way, I can assure you that somewhere on Turtle Island, women, girls, men, specifically women and girls, though, in their most vulnerable state of pregnancy, that are going to a hospital to deliver their baby, their sacred bundle, which is why I call it Sacred Bundle Unborn. This is when they are either forced or coerced into sterilization. In the book, there are 20 contributors. I call them the fire keepers. I think that fire keepers is self-explanatory. Since 2017, when I came forward and approached my attorney, Alyssa Lombard, because I am a part of litigation here in Canada, we have collectively, Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit women, as well as allies, are moving forward progressively and taking action to stand up and have forced coerced sterilizations criminalized in Canada. In the book, I also acknowledge the Peruvian women, whereupon there were, at least to my knowledge, over 200,000 women that were sterilized. I also have a Greenlandic journalist who's Indigenous from Greenland, contributed to the book as well. They had in Greenland what was called the IUD campaign in the 60s and the 70s. Many of the survivors, whether they were girls or women, were unaware that they were sterilized by virtue of an IUD. The various forms of sterilization are in the form of IUDs, hysterectomies, tubal ligations. In Canada, in recent history, about 4 years ago, there was a doctor that was, there were girls that were in the child welfare system, ages 10 to 12, that were forced to have IUDs placed in them. Some of the other work that has been ongoing or occurred here by allies, Dr. Ewan Affleck, who worked amongst the Inuit and in the Northwest Territories as well, as a doctor, as a physician, he produced a film titled The Unforgotten. It's a beautiful film. It can be found online, The Unforgotten. In that film, I do the voiceover for the introduction of this film, which is called Birth. In that segment of the documentary, I talk a lot about the prevailing attitudes, the historical prevailing attitudes of politicians in Canada that justify sterilizations. So I want to end my presentation on the note that though this is ongoing, though as I share today in this moment with you, the knowledge that somewhere on Turtle Island, women and girls are being sterilized, it is not a historical past tense event, it's ongoing. At the same time, there are very focused groups of allies, Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit women, coordinated efforts to have it criminalized. Recently, Senator Yvonne Boyer introduced Bill S-228. When, and I'm knocking on wood here, this bill gets passed, sterilizations will be criminalized in Canada. So I just want to acknowledge, again, all of the women, the grandmothers, the aunties, and the men who had been subjected to sterilizations, and for us to just be conscious and aware that this is ongoing. And I think the repercussions of what happens to us by being sterilized are obvious and evident when we think in terms of the upcoming 7 generations that will not be born because of sterilizations. Hi, hi.